Next up, we have Will O'Brien. Will is the Vice President for Growth and Government Affairs at Zip Mobility. Zip Mobility are Ireland's leading shared e-bike and e-scooter provider to cities. Leading Zip's Mobility's Government Affairs team, Will is currently working with cities and towns in the UK, Poland, Portugal and Spain to launch e-scooter and e-bike services. So discussing something that's close to my heart is shared e-scooters in Ireland. Will O'Brien, you're very welcome.
Thanks, Connor. Hi, everyone. Delighted to be here presenting at this event in Sandyford. As a Sandyford resident, I'm proud. But yeah, look, I'm here today to tell you a little bit about shared e-scooters in Ireland. We were talking about electric cars as a slightly smaller electric vehicle. I'd like to tell you a bit about Zip and how we really think we can get the shared e-scooter service right in Ireland. So first off, who are Zip Mobility? Some of you may be familiar with us, some of you may not. We are founded in 2019 in Dublin. We're based from Nova UCD, and we're Ireland's largest scooter sharing provider, operating in 8 cities across the UK and Poland. Working with cities in Portugal, Spain and Ireland now to prepare for launches in spring 2022, and we've raised 2.1 million to date from investors in Dublin, New York and London that include Enterprise Ireland and former Irish rugby captain Brian O'Driscoll. Our mission is mobility done right, and let me explain what this is. We view at Zip that shared e-scooters and shared e-bikes are going to be an integral component of the transport system of the future. It needs to be multimodal and it needs to be sustainable. However, after taking a deep look at the industry's been around for a number of years now, we identified key problems in the areas of safety, sustainability and community. And then the idea of Zip and mobility done right was born. We seek to combat these problems, to bring mobility done right to communities across Ireland, the UK and Europe. So a bit about shared e-scooters. Why shared e-scooters? Where do they fit in the transport dynamic? Starting with the why, the why is obvious, transport emissions. This is not my word taking for it, it's Sustainable Energy Association of Ireland's word for it. Transport is by far the largest source of energy-related CO2 emissions in Ireland. In 2018, it was responsible by 40%, and it's also the sector where emissions have grown the most since the end of the recession in 2012. So it's a part of our economy where emissions are going up year on year, and we need to do something to change that. So when we look at the drivers, there's a whole number of drivers that, pardon the pun, to this, but one definitely is car dependency, and anybody living in Sandyford like myself sees this every morning or every afternoon at this is a junction on Dromartin Link Road. But anywhere, go in any community across the country, across the world, you'll see car dependency people. You ask them, why don't you cycle or bring your bike to work or get the bus? It's because they can't carry out the journey that they want to with anything but the car. They're dependent on it. So we must ask ourselves, well, why are people dependent on cars and what can we do to remedy that? And a lot of the problems we believe stems from this problem in urban transport and planning called the first and last mile problem. So the first and last mile problem is a problem with the lack of transport options for the first and last mile for a journey. So for me to get into the city, it's very easy. I can, go to a DART or go to a bus or whatever and get into the city. But then if I want to go from the city centre maybe out to the Docklands or whatever, there's no mode of transport there that can satisfy my journey unless I bring a bike with me on the Lewis or something like that. So what we're aiming to do here at Zip is plug the first and last mile of the journeys using shared e-bikes and shared e-scooters, so you don't need to own the vehicle to plug the first and last mile of the journey. So this is what we like to call micromobility, shared e-scooters and shared e-bikes. So how the service works is fairly simple. First, you just have to download the Zip app. Secondly, you locate the nearest scooter in the app. And thirdly, you scan the QR code and zip to your destination. So it really is something that can take a few minutes. You download it, you have the app on your phone, you're ready to go, and you're able to carry out a journey without relying on your car. So now, coming back to Ireland, you now understand maybe a bit about shared e-scooters and shared e-bikes and micromobility and the problems we're trying to solve. But I'd like to give you a bit of an overview on e-scooters in Ireland. You may see private e-scooters out in the wild here in Ireland, people using them, but you haven't seen a shared e-scooter service yet. That's because currently shared e-scooters are not legislated for in the Irish road traffic legislation. So for a number of years, different policymakers have been working on this. It started back in 2019 when Shane Ross was Minister for Transport. The RSA commissioned a study on the safety of e-scooters. There was also public consultations, and then it kind of moved up a gear last year in 2020 when the programme for government was announced, and the coalition government of the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Greens included a promise to legislate for e-scooters in their programme for government. And then this has moved on a bit. This year we've had our first official announcement from the Department of Transport that e-scooters legislation is on the way, and that legislative process has started. In fact, even today, the Road Traffic and Roads Bill 2021 is going to be discussed at the second stage in Leinster House in the Dáil. So the wheels are in motion, and e-scooters are soon to be legal. When, the question is then, well, unfortunately, it's likely not to expect a shared e-scooter service on your streets or any earlier than spring 2022, maybe the summer. There's a number of things that need to move for it to happen. Where you can definitely see this in Dublin and Sandyford in particular, Limerick, Cork, Galway, but there's also great promise in other towns across Ireland, Louth, Waterford, Kilkenny. At Zip, we're currently running the smallest e-scooter trial, we think, in the world, in a village of 8,000 people in a province called Buckinghamshire. So this is one of the great things about e-scooters. It's not a service that is just restricted to your Londons and your Parises. It's something we could see in towns and villages across Ireland as well, provided the conditions are right. So the local authority here overseeing the Sanford area is Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. And what I'd like to talk about now, if Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council were to bring forward a shared e-scooter problem, what can be done to get it right? There is problems in the industry. Anybody who looks at e-scooters will see problems with parking and safety and sustainability. So here I'd like to walk through a quick overview of the fundamentals we believe that need to be done right to get scooter sharing done right here in Dublin and specifically Sandyford. The first question is sustainability. There's no point in bringing in a sustainable mode of transport to your community if the operator or the service that's purporting to be sustainable is in fact not. Some operators out there use gig economy workers to staff and run their programs. They use diesel vans to move scooters and bikes around at night, and this just really isn't a sustainable operating model. So the operating model we implement at Zip starts with a centralised warehouse. So we'd take out a centralised warehouse in the community from which the operations would be based. Then you hire a full-time local team, giving them economic certainty and employment rights, not through the gig economy. Then we use a swappable battery system in our scooters and bikes, meaning that if you want to, if you want to recharge 10 scooters, you just need to bring out 10 batteries, and you don't need to bring 10 scooters in the back of a van to your warehouse, recharge them and bring them back out. It's a much more efficient process, leading to about 10x in efficiency returns, less energy expended, and this is what makes it more sustainable. And then by centralising operations as well, you also have full control over the vehicles that your team are using in running the operations. So our teams use electric vans and cargo bikes to ensure carbon neutrality of all of our programs. We don't outsource anything at Zip. As I mentioned, these are pictures of, on the left there, you see Nick. He's a 6'5" operations manager in Somerset. So don't steal any scooters in Somerset, or else Nick will be on to you. And you'll see these are the scooters. The local team really do take great care of the scooters because they have ownership. They're not a gig worker floating in for a day's work. They've all been with Zip and they're all full-time employees. Community engagement and communication. This is really, really critical. I think a problem in any large-scale infrastructure project is you can make is that communication, community engagement isn't done properly. So going in and talking to communities, getting them on board before you launch, to prevent that kickback or pushback that they might feel if they're not being listened to. So at Zip Mobility, we operate by a community-centric model where we seek to understand the community's mobility needs first and then design the shared mobility scheme around that. So we also get out into the community and talk to them. So the audiences we're looking to talk to are residents, local councillors, advocacy groups representing groups like the blind, and also local businesses, and using a variety of mediums to contact them. So obviously direct contact like email and meetings, but also using social media, print media, radio and TV to get our messaging out, to let the people know that scooters are coming and to be prepared for them, and to give them the information they need to feel safe about the e-scooters. As I mentioned, advocacy groups are a key pillar of this engagement that we do with communities. Reason being, e-scooters are typically quiet devices in the public realm. And if you're suffering from a visual impairment, having something like an e-scooter which is silent, and you're reliant on audio cues to understand your environment, having that in the public realm can be a challenge. So we've partnered with the Irish Guide Dogs. So for over a year now, we've had one of our scooters down at their training facility in Ballincollig, County Cork, and every guide dog is being trained to manoeuvre around a Zip e-scooter. And these are new additions to the public realm, and groups like the Guide Dogs are now learning how to adapt so that we can have a sustainable mobility system, but one that it represents the needs of all and not just the users of the service, the non-users as well. We also do a lot of stakeholder-driven design. So you'll see here, this is a picture. On the left is our CEO and founder, Charlie Gleeson. He's wearing a set of glasses that mimic a visual impairment. And in the background there as well, you'll have the program manager for our e-scooter program. You'll have the councillor in charge of transport in one of our services. And you also have in the back there Sue Taylor. Sue Taylor's a local woman in Somerset where we're operating with a visual impairment. And as you can see, we're all using canes going around the town to understand, okay, what is the experience of someone with a visual impairment around this town, and how can we ensure that the scooters that we're introducing don't impact their day-to-day lives. So that's really key, the understand first and design second. And there's a whole menu of things you can adapt once you understand the community and their needs. You can adapt the operating area. You can put slow speed zones in. So some areas of the community could have actual speed limits that are less than other areas of the community. You might think that a school could be a dangerous area for a collision. So you might actually put a restricted zone in there saying that no scooters are allowed to go near this certain area during these certain times. The number of scooters can be adapted as well. You don't want to overflow a community with too many vehicles, because then you'll just have litter. And the operating hours can be adjusted as well. Some communities may not like having a 24-hour service, others do. It's a question dependent on the community. And the parking model is a critical one as well. Do you want to go for a docked model where scooters have to be left in certain locations, or do you want to go for a dockless model? That again depends on the needs of the community. These are just two examples of some of the slow speeds and restricted zones we've put in other communities based off of extensive stakeholder engagement. Another critical question is parking. You look up e-scooters and you click onto Google Images, I guarantee you'll see plenty of photos of parking problems with scooters. And this is something we're really passionate about at Zip. We operate all of our programs under some sort of controlled parking system. So what we recommend is a virtual dock-based system rather than the dockless model that you may have seen in other cities. What a virtual dock-based system looks like is when you open up your Zip Mobility app, you will only see scooters in certain docks or parking bays across the city or town, and you'll only be able to start or end your ride in these specified virtual docks that are clearly labelled on the ground. And this is to, again, protect the public realm, respect the needs of non-users as well as our users. We also back this up with a parking verification system. So once you end a ride, you're asked to take a photo of your scooter to verify that it was in the right location. And if we do receive complaints of misparked scooters, then we have a mechanism by which we can check, okay, did they park in the right place? Now, that was me parking the scooter in the office. I don't recommend parking it in your office, obviously in a parking bay outside your home or workplace if you can. Safety. Another critical measure, and something that needs to be got right. Anybody that looks again at any news stories related to e-scooters will see people worried about safety. You can only imagine the concerns that there would be if e-scooters were and when they are introduced into Dublin. So one really critical thing you need to get right here is communication to your users. So if you look at the research very clearly indicates a large majority of trips occur in the first 1 to 3 trips of someone's taken on the service. So while they're still learning to use the service, this is when you need to get to your user and communicate rules of safe use. So as you can see here on the scooter itself, we have that communication as well. In the app, we're giving constantly targeted advertisements or messaging based on your user profile, based on the time of day, based on weather conditions, and constantly adapting this and pushing these to the users is critical to get them read up. As well, our website, there's a large FAQ section where you can go through and answer any questions you may have. As well, when a user signs up to the Zip service, they're brought through a training program on their app. However, doing all of this digitally isn't enough. You do need to go out into the community, engage with people in person. Where we find this particularly effective is actually with the older demographics. So you can see here a selection of photos of older people using the Zip service, and we find this training day particularly effective at getting them onboarded to the service. They may be less familiar with the in-app training mechanisms we provide, the messaging that is available on our website. So doing things in person like this, engaging with groups that represent the elderly in communities is a great way to bring them onto the service. We traditionally see our users being younger users. Targeted training days is a great way to engage these older demographics as well. And finally, infrastructure. Infrastructure is critical. I think the phrase "build it and they will come" is overused in so many contexts, but in transport and mobility, it couldn't be any more relevant. So I'd like to go back to the start of the presentation. I showed you all a picture of a junction. This is that junction in 2011. This is it in 2017. This is it in 2018. And this is it today. So you might notice a small difference there, but you can see the development that was done there on the left. We've got segregated cycle lanes. You've got better walking infrastructure there. And this is the new Drummartin Link road cycle route. So this is what you need to get adoption of shared e-scooters and shared e-bikes up. You need to lay down the groundwork. There's some demographics that won't feel safe using an e-scooter or an e-bike unless the infrastructure is there. So segregated cycleways, good cycling infrastructure that makes cyclists and scooters users feel safe will be critical to getting adoption. So to close, Dublin and consequently us in Dún Laoghaire Rathdown will be late to the e-scooter game, but this isn't a problem. This is a great opportunity for us. We have the amazing chance to cherry pick best practices from other jurisdictions and use what has and hasn't worked in other countries and replicate it here. It also gives the local authorities here an option to partner with operators that are passionate about helping Dún Laoghaire Rathdown decarbonise the transport system and have done it in other areas as well. DLR, the County Council in this area has made such great strides in improving its livability in the last 12 months. We've done ambitious pedestrianisation in Blackrock, Dún Laoghaire, other areas, and great infrastructure and investments in the coastal mobility route here in Sandyford and other areas. And now e-scooters present us with the opportunity to add another string to DLR's and the area, Sandyford's mobility bow, but it must be done right. The benefits are there. We can replace car journeys, we can reduce carbon emissions, we can complement public transport. These are all statistics taken from Zip's operation to date. Over 40 tonnes of carbon removed from the atmosphere and 39% of rides being made in conjunction with first and last mile transport. We're also having zero complaints about misplaced scooters. We've had zero serious accident on a Zip scooter. We're also getting great feedback from the groups that are traditionally opposed to e-scooters. That's a quote there from Steve Hyde from the Royal National Institute of the Blind, describing Zip as a superb operator to work with. And the local authorities are happy too. And the press, traditionally negative on e-scooters, are positive about it. So e-scooters are something to be welcomed into our communities, and we're very excited for the next year to see what is to come and introduce our service into Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you, Will O'Brien, Zip Mobility. In my opinion, I think it's probably the opinion of many people that e-bikes, e-scooters are certainly part of the solution, not part of the problem, but definitely part of the solution. And it's great to see the draft legislation progressing, but it could be, hopefully it'll be rubber stamped very quickly. And yes, in Sandyford we've had cycling infrastructure improvements, and that investment is great to see, but we do need more of it, and we hope to see that over the coming months.